Wealth in the Hebrew tradition was never treated as an accident of talent or luck. It was treated as law, not civil law, not market law, but something older. Buried in the cadence of Scripture is a disciplined economic principle so quiet that most readers pass over it. It is not announced as a wealth secret. It is not packaged as prosperity doctrine. It appears instead as instruction, practical, almost mundane. And yet, for centuries, communities that internalized it produced unusual stability, continuity, and intergenerational strength. This is an investigation into that principle, not as inspiration, as structure. 1. The scriptural ground. The verse is found in the book of Deuteronomy. It reads, in careful translation, "You shall surely tithe all the produce of your seed that the field yields year by year." The Hebrew phrase is precise, aser te aser. Surely tithe. The repetition is deliberate. In classical rabbinic interpretation, repetition in the Torah is never decorative. It is emphasis through duplication. The text does not say, give when you feel grateful. It does not say, donate when you are wealthy. It establishes a rhythm, year by year, predictable, measured, structured. The command appears agricultural. But in the ancient Near East, agriculture was economy. Crops were income. Seed was capital. The instruction is not merely charitable. It is architectural. 2. The agricultural mind. To understand this law, one must think like a farmer. In the ancient world, seed was not food. It was future harvest. And if a man consumed all his grain in a season of abundance, he was not merely indulgent. He was destructive. He had eaten tomorrow. Scripture addresses this repeatedly, often without fanfare. It assumes the reader understands the fragility of continuity. The farmer survives by separating seed from consumption. That separation is the hidden wealth law. The tithe, in this context, becomes a forced discipline of separation. It prevents the total merging of income and appetite. You do not eat everything you produce. You designate a portion first. This is not generosity as emotion. It is discipline as survival. 3. The architecture of separation. In rabbinic commentary, particularly within the discussions preserved in the Talmud, the tithe is often linked not only to righteousness, but to structure. Or there is a famous interpretive nuance, tithe so that you may become wealthy. At first glance, this seems transactional. Give and you will receive. But classical Jewish scholarship resists simplistic readings. The idea is subtler. Tithing creates infrastructure inside the individual. When a person systematically separates a defined portion before consumption, he trains his mind to see surplus not as personal entitlement, but as managed resource. The economic result is not mystical multiplication. It is disciplined capital allocation. In Jewish legal tradition, halakha, money is not an emotional instrument. It is governed. 4. The psychological mechanism. The human instinct is immediate absorption. Income arrives, expenses expand, lifestyle rises to meet earnings. Often it exceeds them. Scripture interrupts that instinct. And before you spend, before you adjust, before you upgrade, you separate. This separation performs several psychological functions. It creates friction between earning and consuming. It introduces foresight into present action. It establishes priority over impulse. The tithe is taken from first fruits, not leftovers. This is crucial. If wealth discipline waits until after comfort, it never arrives. Ancient Jewish communities understood something modern economics often rediscovers. Pre-commitment systems outperform willpower. The Torah did not rely on fluctuating motivation. It institutionalized discipline. V. Historical continuity. Throughout centuries of dispersion, Jewish communities often lacked political power and land ownership, yet they developed disproportionate influence in trade, scholarship, and finance. And this phenomenon has many explanations: literacy, legal tradition, portability of skills. But underlying these was a culture of structured allocation. The tithe was not merely given to religious institutions. It supported community infrastructure, scholars, judges, educators, the poor. This meant wealth circulated internally before dispersing externally. A closed-loop support system emerged. Wealth, therefore, was not individual accumulation alone. It was communal reinforcement. When capital strengthens community, community strengthens capital. The law hidden in Scripture created resilience. 6. Misinterpretation. Charity versus architecture. Modern readers often reduce the tithe to charity. Charity is emotional. Architecture is structural. The Torah's system was not sporadic benevolence. It was mandated rhythm. By making giving compulsory, Scripture removed it from mood. This is profoundly economic. When contributions are predictable, institutions can plan. When institutions can plan, they invest. When they invest, continuity emerges. In other words, the tithe transforms scattered generosity into systemic stability. Most people misunderstand this because they view giving as subtraction. The ancient law treats it as allocation. 7. The law of non-consumption. The deeper wealth principle hidden in this instruction is this: not everything that is yours is for you. This concept appears repeatedly in the Hebrew Bible. Fields must leave corners unharvested. Debts are periodically forgiven. Land ultimately belongs to God. Ownership is provisional. This does not weaken property rights. It contextualizes them. When wealth is seen as absolute possession, consumption dominates. When wealth is seen as stewardship, preservation dominates. Stewardship produces continuity. The tithe is the practical expression of stewardship. 8. The economic multiplier. Consider the multiplier effect. A community that systematically sets aside 10% of all production generates a constant reinvestment pool. That pool funds scholarship. Scholarship strengthens literacy. Literacy increases economic flexibility. The result is compounding not only of capital, but of competence. The wealth law is not mystical increase. It is systemic reinforcement. Ancient Jewish communities often prioritized study, not as luxury, but as obligation. This educational emphasis, sustained through structured allocation, created generational mobility. The tithe funded the future indirectly. 9. Time as an asset. The verse insists, year by year. This rhythm introduces long-term orientation. Wealth in Scripture is rarely immediate. It is agricultural, cyclical. The harvest comes after planting. Planting requires withholding. The psychological shift from immediacy to seasonality is transformative. Modern economies reward speed. Ancient systems rewarded patience. The tithe institutionalizes patience. X. The discipline of first allocation. There is a difference between giving what remains and allocating what begins. First allocation signals priority. In business, this principle appears in capital expenditure before dividends. In personal finance, it appears in savings before discretionary spending. Scripture encoded this before spreadsheets existed, and the first fruits were separated before celebration. This ensured continuity survived abundance. 11. The moral dimension. The wealth law is not purely economic. It carries moral framing. When individuals see their prosperity connected to obligation, arrogance diminishes. Humility stabilizes decision-making. Hubris destabilizes it. Communities that link wealth with responsibility tend to avoid reckless concentration. Responsibility distributes power. Distribution prevents fragility. 12. The Jubilee context. The tithe is not isolated. It sits within a broader system including the sabbatical year and Jubilee. Every seventh year, land rests. Debts are recalibrated. After 7 cycles, land returns to original families. This prevents permanent dispossession. While often viewed as utopian, the economic insight is clear. Unchecked accumulation erodes social fabric. The wealth law moderates extremes. Stability over volatility. 13. Modern misreading. Contemporary readers often approach Scripture searching for promises of personal gain. They read tithe so that you may become wealthy as formula. But the original context suggests something else. Wealth emerges not because God rewards arithmetic. Wealth emerges because disciplined separation creates durable systems. The blessing is structural consequence. 14. The discipline behind prosperity. The tithe trains 3 muscles: delayed gratification, structured allocation, communal accountability. These traits are consistently associated with long-term economic success in modern research. Scripture embedded them culturally. The ancient wealth law is therefore not mysterious. It is behavioral economics in covenantal language. 15. A subtle story. There is a recorded anecdote about a medieval Jewish merchant who insisted on setting aside his tenth even during lean seasons. When asked why he did not pause the practice until recovery, he reportedly answered, "If I interrupt the structure in hardship, I will abandon it in comfort." This is the heart of the law. Continuity requires consistency across seasons. 16. The hidden risk of abundance. Abundance tempts expansion of appetite. Without pre-commitment, surplus becomes lifestyle. Lifestyle becomes obligation. Obligation reduces flexibility. The tithe interrupts this escalation. It ensures that growth does not consume its own foundation. 19. And the principle abstracted. If one removes the theological framing, the underlying principle remains. Before consumption, allocate for continuity. Continuity may mean savings. It may mean reinvestment. It may mean education. It may mean community strengthening. But it must be first. The order matters more than the percentage. 18th. Why it remains. Hidden, the law is hidden not because it is obscure, but because it is simple. Complex strategies attract attention. Simple disciplines build wealth. Scripture rarely glorifies complexity. It prescribes rhythm, year by year. 19. The scholar's observation. When studying Jewish economic history, one notices patterns of literacy, community cohesion, portable skills, and structured philanthropy. These are not coincidences. They are outcomes of internalized law, and the tithe habituated foresight. Foresight accumulates advantage. 20. Closing insight. The ancient wealth law hidden in Scripture is not a mystical key. It is a discipline of separation. Not all that you earn is meant for immediate use. By separating first, you create architecture. By creating architecture, you sustain continuity. And continuity, more than brilliance, more than luck, is what produces enduring wealth. Scripture did not hide this principle in secrecy. It placed it plainly. But plain laws are easy to overlook. The farmer understood. The scholar understood. The community that practiced it survived dispersion, exile, and upheaval, carrying its capital not only in coin, but in structure, year by year, quietly. And that quiet rhythm became strength.